If you're watching this video, you're most likely a Sitecore developer. Now, as a Sitecore developer, we want fast deployments. We want to choose the infrastructure that we deploy on. We want to choose whether it's our own machine, whether it's a virtual machine, whether it's a server, whether it's in the cloud, and what cloud providers, and etc. We also want the deployment to be the same across the environments. We don't want to have to meddle with different frameworks, the easier it is, the better. We want it to be repeatable. We want it to be scalable. In other words, we just want it to be easy. Now, the Sitecore installation framework is a framework for orchestrating the installation and configuration of Sitecore on-premise. The Sitecore installation framework is meant to be configured. It is meant to be extended. It is a framework, in other words. It's meant to be used in developer workstation setups, in continuous delivery scenarios, one-off installations, or whatever you like. If you go on to dev.sitecore.net today, you can download a set of pre-configured topologies for on-premise installation. It's very important to say these are sample topologies. These are inspirations for your specific topology, for your local development, for your test environment, for your production environment. The the point of the samples is for you to get inspired so that you can create the topologies and the configuration of Sitecore that fits the scenario that your customer or the requirements that your customers have. During this presentation, we'll dive into some of the pre-configured Sitecore topologies, and we'll look at how to change them, how to configure them to achieve other deployment scenarios, other scaling needs. My name is Thomas Elblom. I'm the product owner of the Sitecore installation framework, and I've been doing Sitecore installation, Sitecore development for years and years and years. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a dive off the edge of the Sitecore installation framework and Sitecore installation. One of the points I want to highlight is that before we get started on SIF is that Sitecore loves Azure. We really, really love Azure. Sitecore or Azure PaaS is the preferred way to deploy Sitecore, to run Sitecore. And Sitecore is a cloud-first company. We will continue to invest in cloud and in Azure to make it more and more favorable for you to choose the cloud in running Sitecore. Because the cloud is easy. I mean, it's a lot easier than on-premise. It's scalable in a whole different manner. It is, and it's also configurable. The Sitecore installation and deployment is just as configurable in the cloud as it is on-prem. And in this scenario, one of the really important points to bring forward is that all the prerequisites are taken care of. You don't have to install any software, any infrastructure. You don't have to do anything of that. So, so it's really, really easy. However, even though we love cloud, we realize that even as a cloud company, we need on-premise. We need it for a lot of cases, and there might be specific production environments that needs on-premise, but we also need it for development. We need it for debugging and all those kind of things. So this leads us elegantly back to SIF. So the question is, what is the most important thing? A rhetorical question to you is, what is the most important thing when running a SIF installation and running a SIF configuration? The most important thing is prerequisites. Prerequisites is the single biggest problem when running an installation of Sitecore on-premise. So before you run an on-premise installation, before you run any kind of configuration or SIF configuration, be sure that you check your prerequisites. It goes across all the products, whether it's an Experience Manager or commerce or anything. You have to study the documentation. You have to make sure that the environment that you're installing on matches exactly what has been defined by the SIF configuration. So that means you have to make sure that you have the required software installed. What versions of the required software is needed? What is the configuration of that software? How is it set up? Is it set up in the correct manner? What are the default paths and names that the configurations, the on-premise installation assumes? So all those things. This can only be said too few times. Prerequisites, prerequisites, prerequisites. It is the single biggest problem of installing Sitecore on-premise. If we took away the prerequisites, easy peasy, hence the cloud thing. But on-premise, you really have to be meticulous when you're checking the prerequisites. Now, during this presentation, um, we'll go through 7 installations of Sitecore. So we'll go through and run through 7 different installations. We will look at installing over 70 different roles, that is databases, websites, Windows services, indexes, all those kind of things that gets installed with Sitecore. And we'll also focus primarily on the development or the developer area. So how do you set up development a development uh, environment? How would you apply this in more of a DevOps context? So let's get installing. Let's um, let's do a quick demo and run an installation. So what I'll do is I'll just go and open a PowerShell command here. And for some reason it starts up here. And then I will go to my demo area here. And I'll go to my first demo and I'll run that. Now what that does is it installs a what is called an XM1, and we'll get back to that in a second. So this is basically running that environment, and then we will. I'll just show you quickly my IIS here that I have got nothing there yet. So the installation is running. I've got nothing, and because I am the person that I am, of course, I got a Habitat website, but that's stopped. So let's go back and look at, while that's running in the background, let's quickly look at what we're installing here. So why did we build, why do we have SIF? So SIF, the Sitecore install framework is vastly different from the previous installation experiences that we have with the zip file or the exe file. So why did we see a need to build a new install framework in Sitecore? Well, the truth is that Sitecore is evolving. We now have 3 main products. We have the Experience Manager, the Experience Platform, and Experience Commerce. We have more features in the product. We're getting more and more features in the product. We're also getting more and more scalability. So each of these different processes and features in the product can scale in a much higher degree, whether it is email marketing, content management, um, checking out products in commerce, all those, or order management or order processing and all those kind of things. They're all, we're really focusing on scalability. Now that, of course, changes the architecture vastly. So really good for you as a developer and architect managing topologies and installing topologies. A good overview of Sitecore architecture is critical to success. You really, it takes, there's a new aspect to learning Sitecore. It is learning the Sitecore architecture, because it is no longer just one website running with a bunch of databases. It is so many websites. As you can see here, I know it's very granular and don't focus on the details here, but we've got over 50 roles in the entire Sitecore sort of scope or product scope. So as you can imagine, the configuration options and scaling options are vast. There's so many ways to scale and configure Sitecore now. And all the features and processes in Sitecore can be scaled in some manner. So knowledge of not only the solution requirements, so the customer requirements, but also the how that matches to the Sitecore architecture is really paramount. It is so important that you understand Sitecore architecture. Now let's have a look at have a play with the Sitecore Experience Manager and the options here. So if we look at it's still ticking away, we'll go and have a look at the installation structure here. So I've zoomed in my Visual Studio Code a bit. So what I was running was the first demo here. Um, I have the primary script that I ran was install PS1. This is a script that I've created. Um, and it basically takes a bunch of parameters, which I'll show you in a second, and then it runs 3 Sitecore install framework installations, or because this is really SIF. SIF is this one install Sitecore configuration, and that is a PowerShell method that takes a bunch of parameters. And then we look at parameters, and we can just collapse this, and you can see what we do is we set up a Solar, we set up a content management server, and a content delivery server. And all of these 3 steps in SIF requires a number of parameters. So for Solar, it's the path to Solar, or sorry, this is the path to the package, the Sitecore package, so sorry, the Sitecore configuration, the Sitecore install framework configuration that we're going to run. So this is basically the SIF configuration, and we'll take a look at that in a second. Then there's the Solar root, the Solar surface, and the core prefix. And then for the content management server, there's another set of parameters, and for the content delivery server, there's another set of parameters. And up here we have some general settings that we choose. So as you can see, we're installing with the prefix SUGCON XM1, and then we postfix each of the roles with .cd or .cm. So if we look at the configuration, which is up here, we've got 3 corresponding configurations, one for content management here, and these are the parameters that are passed. So as you can see, the package, the license file, the SQL database prefix, so on. And then we look at the tasks. Here, the tasks are what is actually executed. So what it does is it creates the path where it installs the content management files, server files, creates an app pool, creates a website, stops the website, stops the app pool. It removes the default binding, so the port 80 star. So we want to remove that. Then we create a binding with thumbprint because Sitecore is secure by default. So what we do is if you provide an SSL certificate, then this SSL certificate that you provide will be bound to the host name. So you'll get a SSL or HTTPS running on your website. If you do not do that, then later in this we will actually create a self-signed certificate for it so that the CM server is always running HTTPS, whether you provide a production SSL or whether you just want SIF to create one for you. So create the host header, set some file permissions. It installs the WDP file, and we'll get back to that. Then here is where we say if you don't provide the SSL certificate, then we will create a binding with a development thumbprint. So a custom will do a self-signed certificate. Set the license, app pool, start the website, and there's some Solar stuff. Now the WDP package is where a lot of the magic happens because the 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 configuration itself, the WDP is where all the files are kept. So we take the WDP, which is a zip file, and then we run the web deploy on this package or on this web deploy package. And this also takes a bunch of parameters here. So in the CM server, we have not only the files, but we also have databases. So the WDP, this single step here, not only installs the files on your system, but also actually installs the databases. Now, if we go back, it should be done. So now we have that's been running. And if we just go and refresh, you can see we have a CD server, we have a CM server. This is set up with HTTPS. We have the databases for this installed, and we have the Solar cores and everything installed as well. We'll dive into some of the other aspects later, but one of the key things, I'm not going to go into detail about what a CIF configuration is. What I want you to go and do is check out this video series um, by uh, uh, by Kieran Marin, the lead developer on CIF, and that describes all the details of the tasks and the parameters and the configuration functions and how you can extend CIF with your own stuff. So it really goes into details with all the CIF options. And there's also some samples available. So if you go to this one, you can play around with the exact demos that Kieran goes through in the demo. So Sitecore 9 offers a lot of options and a lot of like indefinite number of topologies that can be put together. Now we only ship a few different topology with Sitecore, so only a few different CIF configuration and these WDP packages. But the as I mentioned before, it is important to think of these or not think of these configurations as definitive. They are in no way definitive. These are your configurations. When you download them, they are your configurations to reconfigure, to match the solution requirements, and to own as part of your solution code going forward. So we were looking at XM1 or XM scaled, as it's called. This is the one we looked at just now, and the word scaled means that all the roles, if you look at application roles, in this case, the content delivery, content management roles, um, all the roles in this configuration that can be combined or split up are all split up. So a scaled solution means it is split up. So the CDCM server could potentially be merged together as one website, but they are split up in a scaled setup. we For XP we ship an XP single configuration. Now, this is the other opposite of that is where all the roles that can be combined are combined. So in this case, for an XP single, the content delivery, content management, XDP processing, and XDP reporting roles are all combined into one website, one application pool. So these roles are typically, or these topologies are typically optimal for a development setup to make it as simple as possible, as few websites as possible. We also ship an XP scaled, which is the most atomized setup for the Experience platform, where every single role has its own installation. So we have a CD, CM, reporting, processing. Everything is one website, and can be split up across different web servers or run in the same web server and so on. Now for Sitecore, for commerce, it's a little different. The Commerce CIF configuration is an explicit developer-centered configuration. It's a scaled setup, so every role has its own website running, um, but it all installs on a single machine. Unlike the other configurations where you can actually use remote PowerShell to set it up on a distributed environment, the XC CIF configurations are meant for a single or out of the box. If you don't reconfigure it, it installs on a single machine. It also installs things like Sitecore packages onto the CM server. It also installs some demo data inside the databases so that you get some products and some demo data to look at. Now, let's look at the next demo. So what we want to do is we want to combine and scale down a configuration. So give you an example of how to take a configuration and reconfigure that to create a scaled down scenario. Because one of the things that we don't ship is the XM single. We do not ship a setup where just one machine runs, or one website runs both the CD, CM for the Experience Manager product. We do ship an XP single where all the XP, all the XDB roles are included, but not from an XM. So, and we also do not ship the even more downscaled one, the setup without Solar, where the search engine is Lucene. So this is what we're going to go with and try to have a look at. So I've created a demo for this. So what we have is an install here, and as you can see, all it does is it installs one configuration. If you remember the previous one, that installed first the Solar, so it set up the Solar cores, and then a CM, a CD. This one just installs a standalone. So what I've done in this case is I've taken the uh, the XP single, so the XP the XP single Sitecore package, so the WDP that installs the Sitecore, the combined packages for everything. And then I've taken out everything that has to do with XP. So what I did was I looked at the XP package, so the one that has XDB enabled, and then I compared it with the XM content management server. And we can just run a comparison quickly, and then I can show you that there's really not that many changes. So this on the right hand side is an XP, so with XDB enabled, um, and this one on the left hand side is the XM, so it has XDB disabled, but it's just the CM role. So let's go back and have a look at the specific changes. So for example, here it disables EXM. So over on the XP side, it has XP or EXM enabled. Um, then further down, we look at some XDB configuration files, which is obviously where we enable or disable XDB. And down here, we have some connection strings. As you can see, we have all the connection strings for all the XP databases and EXM and some of the certificates and things like that that's required. And that's really it. So um, so what I've gone and done is I've created a configuration, so an XP or Sitecore XM0 JSON file, and it takes a whole lot less parameters because it doesn't do all the XP things, and I've removed all the Solar stuff. But it still creates the path, create the app pool, create the website, stops the website, and so on. Creates the bindings. In this case, it just adds a binding to, it doesn't run SSL or anything like that. We don't want all the security stuff. We install the WDP. Now, I have not changed the WDP. So what I'm installing from is the XP WDP. But as you remember, the WDP does not only just contain the files, it also contains a bunch of databases. And it also specifically contains some of the XDB databases like EXM and reporting and processing databases. So what I do in the WDP is I skip some specific tasks. Now a WDP, if we go and have a look at it, consists of two important files. One is the parameters files. That's what all the input is defined. And then the archive is what defines what happens in, if we go and have a look at that archive file here, you can see these elements in this XML file are all the tasks that are executed. This one is install this database, so that's a DAC pack, so it's a database compression format. So it installs this database, it runs a SQL script to create a user for this database, and so on, blah, blah, blah. It creates a lot of different databases, runs a lot of scripts. And then finally, the IIS app down here installs files onto a website. So what I want is I want to skip all the ones that has to do with XP because I'm not interested in the XP ones. So I am running this XM0 and I'm skipping all the EXM stuff. Now the parameters, I have to specify parameters. Even though they're not used, I still have to specify them. So all the XP parameters, I'm just putting in a value of unused, just to, say, skip that. Then what I do after, so now it's installed all the files, what I do afterwards is I set configurations. So I change config files and I change uh, some of those that you saw that I compared, like EXM enabled, XDB enabled, those kind of things. And I set the search engine to be Solar, or Lucene, sorry. I'll just go ahead and run it actually. And then I change all the connection strings or remove all the connection strings for all the databases that I don't need. I remove a specific marketing automation piece and so on. So there's no Solar, no anything. So this will take a while for it to run. And then um, we'll let that run and then we'll get back to it. Now, the opposite of that obviously is to go from the XM1 and scale out, so install even more roles. So if we look at, for example, a load balanced CD environment where we have more CD servers, multiple CD servers, and you could have a debugging scenario where you want to look at how does your solution work in a scaled CD environment. Now, the important thing about a scaled CD environment is that you need to consider session state. So it's not only just installing a secondary role, it is also setting up session state for the solution. And if you want to run it on a local machine, you also need a load balancer. For session state in this example, I've chosen to use Redis because it's really easy to work with. And I've chosen a load balancer, a local load balancer called Nginx, and which is also super simple to set up. Now, all of these things took me more or less, all the demos that you see today, it took me pretty much like a day to configure. It's really basic. Once you get the hang of the framework and the get the learning curve over with, it's really simple, trust me. Um, so the other thing I want to show is how to install the content publishing role, because the content publishing role is also interesting in sort of setting up an additional role or creating a CIF configuration for a role that doesn't have a CIF configuration. Because today we don't ship a CIF configuration for this content publishing role. All right, so let's have a look at that. So this one is still running. And if I just refresh this, you'll see it's still running the XM0 here. I do have a CD and a CM. I'll just go ahead and open another PowerShell because my computer is so powerful that I can run many installations at the same time. And if I go to here, go to number 3. So this is where I set up the CD server. I'll just run that while we're waiting. Oh, now my XM0 is done. So what I can do is I can go and have a look at the IIS again, and hopefully it should have that XM0, yep, running. And I can go to SUGCON XM0/Sitecore, and then we'll see that spin up and show me a running XM0. What I want to show you here is let's go and have a look at the CD one. Let's go back to that. So inside the CD one in the install script, we have just one role that we install. That's the CD2. So this is a content delivery role that is exactly like the other content delivery role, just with another port. So it doesn't run on port 80, it runs on port 81. Um, so port 81 here. And it knows the instance names of the other XM1. So we're running on the SUGCON XM1. So we're going to extend the one that we initially created, these ones here. We're extending that with an additional CD server. Um, But what is important is we might have to skip some pieces. So we're skipping, for example, all the database pieces. If there's any databases in the CD package, then we don't want to do that because we don't want to install the databases twice. We only want to install the files, right? So we're setting all the parameters. We're setting the port to port 80 or 81, sorry. But that's really it. We've taken the existing CD, the one that we had up here, this one, copied it down, added a different, skipped some things, and then we're basically running that. The other part is we have to reconfigure the CM server to the CM and the CD server, the other CD server, for scalability. So inside that, this is a brand new CIF file where what I do is I set up session state. So I set up Redis on the CD server. So here we enable the scalability settings file. If there are any changes in that, then we set the private session state provider to be Redis. Um, and then we set the shared session state provider, but that's only if it is not the CM server, because the CM server does not support the shared session state at all. So hopefully that is that. So I will just show you. So now the installation is done. I've got a CD2 now. Now if I go and run run a command line, not so Redis CLI like that. Then we can have a look there, and what we'll just do is we'll clear. We will just run a flush all on this. That should completely wipe the Redis cache for it, and then we will yep, just have a look at the bindings over here. So we've got the port 80, we've got port 81. And now what I've done is I've set up the Nginx to run on, so our load balancer to run on port 8000. So that should load balance the CD environment across CD1 and CD2. Now, oh, and I've just realized that I have to start it. Here it is. So we'll just start that. And then I'll start my website. And now it'll hit one of the servers. We don't know which one. But if we go and have a look at the keys here, once it's loading, then we'll start seeing session data come into play here. While that's running, I will just go and start the next one, which is number 4, which is the publishing service. So I'll just go ahead and install that while that's there. So let's go and have a look at keys here. Still running. Right. Well, the thing about this the publishing service is that if you go and download the packages, these are all just the zip files. So it's a module. This is the service. So that's the actual Windows service that runs, web service that runs. And this is the module that you have to install on the CM server, or as in Sitecore. So what I've done is I've created, um, first of all, a publishing service configuration, but also changes to the CM and the CD server to support this publishing service. So the publishing host itself, what that does is it unpacks the zip file, and then it runs in the zip file. There's a bunch of or there's an exe file that can be run to set the different parameters. For example, connection strings to the databases, um, instance names, update the schema in the databases, and then install the actual website. So that is done by the host itself. Um, Now, the other part is the installation of the package. So the actual Sitecore package. So here we've got an install Sitecore package on the CM server. That is an extension to SIF. So if I go down here to modules, you'll see here that I have extensions.psm1. That is this file. So in here we have a PowerShell function called install package task that actually goes and installs a package in Sitecore. There's a couple of examples of that out and about. Um, I've taken this off a blog post, and then I register that as a task that I can run with SIF called install package. So if I go back into the CM, you'll see this is the one called install package, and it takes the package and it takes the URL for the site and so on. Secondly, it configures the publishing module on the CM server. So it sets some XML on that. Same for the CD server. It installs specific files on the CD server, and then it configures the CD server to run that. So now we've actually got the CM server running. So let's just see if. So what you can see here is we've got the XM1, the CD, not the CD2. So that's the one we hit with the first request. Now the publishing service might have reset the path, so I can go and start this. I can also go onto the CM server. Now I need HTTPS, go /Sitecore. So that'll start up the XM1 CM server. And show how the publishing service actually works in that. While that's ticking away, I'll go back and actually what I want to do after this is I want to show you even more fun, even more roles. One of the first things I want to show you is uninstall, because uninstall is one of the things that we get a lot of questions about. Why don't you have an uninstall for every install? Well, it's really simple to create one actually. So I've created a sample uninstall here that, as you can see, it has the same format, and what it does is it calls an uninstall JSON here with some parameters for Solr and SQL Server. This is actually a universal uninstall. All it does is it takes the prefix and then it uninstalls everything that has to do with Sitecore in that. So it removes the websites. So any move websites with that prefix, all the app pools, all the Windows services, any files that's been installed, it stops Solr and cleans the cores out for that. And then it starts Solr and then it removes the databases. And as you can imagine, there's a bunch of extensions for doing that. Because I need to, for example, remove the Windows services. That's not something that's out of the box with SIF. So, but you can see this is really the length of an uninstall. It's not that complicated. Let's go ahead and have a look at our CM server. So we've got the CD server running here, and if we go and just refresh it again and again, then at some point we should see it hitting both CD1 and CD2. So CD1, CD2. If I go and have a look at our keys here, we have session data both in CD2, so CD2 and CD. So it's hit both one and the other. It is a load balanced setup. In here, we have the publishing service, so that gets installed here. So we have everything running, including the publishing service. we can even, and it has to start up the publishing service, but that's relatively quick. And we'll just go and run a publish, and you can see a publish, we're using the new publishing services really quick. So here's all the items that it's publishing, and it's in progress, and it should be done in a few seconds. Um, and while that's ticking, I will just go, oh, they're done, completed, right? Um, so what I'll do is I'll go and run my uninstall. And that is a relatively quick thing as well. It removes all the XM1 stuff because we don't need that anymore. And while that's ticking, let's go and install the XP stuff. So XP, this is a completely, oh, it stopped. Shit. So don't do multiple things at once. That's the that's the lesson there. So it's starting Solar again. We have to wait for Solar, and then it removes all the database. Boom, everything is uninstalled. We now have, and refresh this, we only have the XM1. We could go and uninstall that. I have an uninstall for that as well. But let's try and create this again. We run the installation again, and it starts ticking away. Now the the thing about XP is that this is a completely standard XP one. So all I've done is I've created the install and the parameters PS1 file. And you can see XP requires a lot of things. It has a certificate. You need a certificate for Sitecore to connect to XConnect, because that's the way authentication is done to make the connection secure between it. And then we have all the Solar stuff, XConnect collection, collection search, marketing automation, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So this is an XP scaled. This is all the roles in XP. Now, what we want to do is we want to have a look at XP for development. So what we've done is we've created, so one of the things is for XP, you need, so an XP single with all the roles combined, you need Sitecore and you need XConnect. Those are the two installations, primary installations that you run. Then you need Solar because XConnect cannot run without Solar. Of course, we could run Lucene on Sitecore and the content search pieces, but not on XConnect. So we're choosing to use Solar here. One of the things that in a development scenario that we can disable, however, is the certificate piece, because we really don't want secure communication between Sitecore and XConnect in a in a development setup. It makes it easy to debug XConnect to find out what the hell is going on back and forth between everything. So what I've done is I have a configuration here that sets up Sitecore, and what I've done is I have gone and disabled some client certificate stuff. So this is all the connection strings that has the certificate stuff for XConnect. And then I enabled what's called invalid client certificates. So I just set that to true. That's really all of it. All you have to do is to disable client certificate configuration between Sitecore and XConnect. I also removed HTTPS, so you don't need to run HTTPS. And that's it. And then the same thing for XConnect over here. I installed, or I set some XML down here. This is a standard one. There's nothing special around that. Here, XConnect enforces SSL. So what I just disable, I rename the file called enforce SSL XML to disabled. And the same with certificate. There's an enforce SSL with certificate validation. I disable that as well. So those two changes means now you can run XConnect and Sitecore communication without any certificates and authentication. This is of course only um, for for non-production. So let's go and run that. Okay, and so while that's ticking, let's show you, I want to show you the last thing is commerce. So commerce is, and this is vastly different from the commerce from the others that you've seen. So commerce is a lot different because it does a lot of things. It doesn't just install websites and databases, it also installs packages and installs data, demonstration data. It sets up a lot of different websites and configures a lot of stuff. So if I go into configs here, you'll see a whole range. So this install one, what that does is it runs just one configuration. And that one configuration is called, that's wrong, is called um, master single server. So this is the one configuration that is run. Now, what's interesting about this is that this one configuration runs other configurations. So it is basically a nested configuration. So as you can see, it runs a task called install Sitecore configuration, which is a standard SIF task that takes another JSON file. So first it creates a binding, installs Solar cores, deploys the commerce engine, deploys BizFX, a density server, utilities, blah, 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 blah. A whole lot of things. Lots and lots and lots of configurations. And those are all nested down here. So you can see, for example, for the commerce engine, how do we deploy that? Well, this is how that's done. It sets up everything, so both the minions and all the different commerce roles. Um, and just done a bunch of tasks for that as well. So it's a quite complicated nesting of SIF configuration. It takes a bit of understanding how to work with that. So let's go and have a look at the. Um, so that's ticking away, which was what? I think this is the one we want to look at. This is the XP dev one. And this should be done in just a second because now it's installing creating the shards in the databases, all those kind of things. And the interesting thing about that one is so if I go and have a look at this one, you can see all the XP ones, and then I've got the XP dev here, XConnect one. What's interesting thing is you can, once you've set that up, and I don't think I have time to do that, but once I've set that up, I can use Fiddler as a proxy to channel to look at traffic going from Sitecore to XConnect. Because we've skipped all the certificate stuff, we don't have HTTPS, we can then start looking at what's the data going back and forth from Sitecore. That's kind of interesting, very gives you a lot of insight into how XConnect works. Right, in the interest of time, let's continue. So what did we install? Well, we installed the minimal XM0, the 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 X the Experience Manager product with Lucene running on a single website. We also installed XM scaled, so that's out of the box XM scaled, no other monkey business. We installed a load balanced CD environment with session state with Redis set up. We also installed the publishing the content publishing server and got that to work. Then we are in the process of setting up XP scaled, so all the different roles. That should be done by the time I'm done here. And then we set up an XP single, but in a tweaked way for a developer workstation, so that you could actually start debugging communication between XM and XP, or sorry, yeah, between CMS and XConnect. And finally, we had a look at the commerce setup and how that works. So just the thing, the commerce setup just sets up the commerce roles, not the one at the bottom, the XM and XP roles. So you basically have to run an XP install with the XM and XP roles, and then you have to set up commerce afterwards. So as you can imagine, there's a whole lot of different roles and topologies, and you really have to make an effort to understand the architecture before you start on your on your journey of installing Sitecore or learning to install Sitecore. Because recipe for successful installations, first of all, plan your installation. Make sure you you think of why you're doing it. What's the purpose of your Sitecore installation? What is the requirements of the customer? Then you have to understand the architecture. You have to understand which roles are does what and how do they scale, how do they combine. And thirdly, learn the tools. Understand if you're running in cloud, you have to understand the ARM templates. If you're running on-premise, you have to understand SIF configurations. So those three bullets, like really know your customer's requirements, understand the Sitecore architecture, and then learn the tools. So the middle one, understanding the architecture, we're gonna come out with a bunch of documentation for this. We're gonna document um, all the roles and architecture. It's coming out very soon. I can give you a sneak preview. So here's the architecture and roles documentation. So what we'll do is we will, for each product, the Experience Manager, Experience Platform, Experience Commerce, even for the connectors and the cloud services, we can dive into every specific role. So the content delivery role, what is the supported infrastructure? What does it reference? And through which ports? What are the search indexes that are used, cloud services that's used? How do you scale it? How do you combine it? What's any privacy and security concerns? Um, and the same for the XP roles, collection service, XDB processing, even for databases, knowing which application roles accesses which database, and so on. We also ship if you followed on YouTube, there's a bunch of videos that describes the data flows. Um, we are also shipping documentation for those data flows. So we can go into how does the Sitecore Experience Platform collect experience data? What are the roles and references involved there? Um, so really documentation thoroughly on all that. Uh, There's also a privacy guide for GDPR coming and a more comprehensive security guide, so how to secure your environments. And as I mentioned, the YouTube channel for architecture and scaling, you should go and have a look at that if you haven't followed it during the last month. Also, I want to highlight again the SIF fundamentals. If you want to know the basics of SIF, go ahead and do that. Um, I also want to highlight the Sitecore Install extensions, which is a open source community project that extends SIF with a bunch of custom tasks. So really go and have a look at that because it does a lot of the things that you usually want to do, like configure some of the prerequisites, even go back and install 8 using SIF. Install any Sitecore modules and uninstall and all those kind of things. It has examples of many of the things that I showed you today.